Jack, boy, get yourself in here.
Thank you very much, Admiral.
Jack, come on in.
Are you Ryan?
Yes, sir.
Come on, we're late.
Lieutenant Ryan, I just want to say thank you for your service. Appreciate that.
I was a fan of the movies. That's where I came from. You know, it's like I went to them, I loved them.
And they're all just so well made.
For me, it's sort of a full circle because I used to double Harrison Ford in all the Indiana Jones and Frantic and a bit on Jedi and stuff like that. So for me, it's fun to do this because it's the prequel setting up for what Harrison did on the other ones.
Ryan, come on in.
So it's really quite fun for me, you know?
Obviously, I knew the films and knew the character, and I haven't read all the books. There are too many books in the series, I think.
I felt as though, having admired the previous pictures, I didn't feel I was in competition or have to prove anything, but I was very glad to get a chance to run with that particular story.
It's been a long journey to get to here through many different scripts and permutations of it.
I think it's been 5 years of developing scripts for this.
Years ago, we started trying to do it for Harrison Ford. We spent about a year and a half, and then Harrison said, you know, I love this character, but I got to go to work. And he went off to do another movie. So there I was sitting alone with the franchise character and nobody to play it or write it.
I was a huge fan of the Jack Ryan series, and they weren't doing anything with it. And I went to then head of production, Brad Weston, and said, I've got an idea about how to approach this character. Why don't we try to bring it back? And he embraced it, and we started on our first version of it.
We had a really fantastically structured script. It was very tight. The plot was really rich. Characters were well developed.
As opposed to it just being the sort of everyday action film where you don't get the kind of performances, you don't get the story, you just get action scene to action scene to action scene.
I read this from cover to cover, and it was very nerve-jangling, spine-tingling action thriller, but more than that, it carried a sort of emotional charge that I was surprised by. You really care about Jack Ryan. He's a very particular kind of character in this genre of film.
It's not your grandfather's Jack Ryan. This is totally brand new. You know, it's introducing the franchise to a whole new audience and a whole new group.
This is cornerback. I have a situation. I need help.
Category.
Somebody tried to kill me. There's a body.
You are breaking protocol, cornerback.
I'm out of my goddamn element is what I am. I'm just an analyst. I only did 3 weeks at the farm.
I think everybody was happy for it to be reimagined, to be reinvented, sort of from the inside out, and also for it to be something about arriving at Jack Ryan.
It's interesting because this movie's not based on any of the Clancy books. Maybe that's part of what made it difficult.
There was something about the longevity of Tom Clancy's characters that meant that they were obviously speaking to people over quite a long period of time. That usually means there is something universal wrapped up in the web of that.
The con is that we had to come up with this whole large conspiracy, this whole notion of a global disaster impending.
The cell order is programmed for 9:06 a.m. Eastern time. They're dumping everywhere. Tokyo, London, Shanghai, a dozen other exchanges. It's almost 2 trillion. It's going to be a wipeout.
It's 18 hours.
But the advantage is we were able to take from every one of the books things about Jack Ryan.
An author and professor at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, Ryan is a former Marine lieutenant.
We were able to say, all right, he had a past history of being in the finance world.
He'd been a Marine, but there wasn't a book written about him being a Marine. We knew, you know, his father is a police officer.
He's been to war. He was in a helicopter accident. This is all Tom Clancy lore.
There's elements that you've seen in some of the movies. There's certain elements you haven't seen at all.
So a lot of our process was about pulling all that together to tell the beginning story of the Jack Ryan character, where he was before he was a spy.
Jack starts off not even carrying a gun. And so he's a financial guy, but he's such a resourceful person that we could revolve the movie around his character.
In a way, it's the truest version of Jack Ryan because we were able to, frankly, take things from all sorts of different things and put them all together into one piece.
You're operational now.
What always distinguished the prior movies was they were always, to me, slightly more intelligent. The stakes of it was always high, and there was always a sense of really contemporary feeling. When the IRA was big, we were in Patriot games. You know, when Pablo Escobar, etc. So what it was always great is I think it had a sense of immediacy. And that was one of the first things that we tried to create with this.
The challenge for us was to find the relevancy in a world that's completely changed since these books were originally written.
It's in a post-9/11 world that deals with covert agencies and the kinds of financial crises that can be global in a heartbeat that we all have experience of watching unfold.
Clancy came at it from a really human point of view and an incredibly researched point of view. So I think the world that he created, you recognized that it was our world. So this movie's about today, for sure, you know. What's going on in our world today? A very rough and emerging Russia appears. Young people have a hard time finding their way in life. There's not a lot of opportunity. Economic precipice, that's part of this. Terrorism. So this movie's really got 5 things going on that make it incredibly contemporary.
Did they hit anybody's Instagram, Facebook, Hopscotch, Reddit, anything?
None.
Here, Image Looker. Our guy never went to New York. He had someone scout it for him, and they posted the pictures so he could plan the attack.
There's this weird balance of intellect and everyman about Jack Ryan, which I think is very unique to Jack Ryan. James Bond isn't that way. Jason Bourne isn't that way. Salt isn't that way.
Part of the challenge for us was carving out our own space within the spy world and making sure that there was a good reason to do this movie within the context of those other movies and to tell a different part of the spy oeuvre.
Those are things that have to be taken into consideration when you're making it. You know, the spy movie, the CIA movie is a staple of Hollywood now, and so how do we confront this to make it original is always the job.
Not there yet. How we doing?
Okay, unless you ran the red lights.
Back on site.
You ran the red lights, get out.
What I've always loved about the Jack Ryan films is there's always consequence to action. You know, if you have a fight, you get hurt. You have an emotion that's riddled with guilt as well as relief.
It's not like a Jason Bourne character where he can, you know, suddenly just do everything. He's very much a man behind a desk who kind of suddenly finds himself in the middle of it.
One quick thing. According to this, there are 17 senior scientists on duty today. I only count 14.
Dr. Milanov is out sick. Orlov is on vacation. Spassky, I am grieved to say, was killed.
What makes Jack Ryan an interesting character, and it sounds, I guess, a little simple, but that he's a good man.
You're going to jail, pal.
You are such a Boy Scout. You see everything in black and white.
No. Not black and white, Ritter. Right and wrong.
He's the best and the brightest, a brilliant analytical mind, but a sort of reluctant CIA man. And in this origin story, you get the chance to see how someone who originally had joined the Marines, had been sort of invalided out with a terrible helicopter crash and subsequent very, very serious back injury, quite where they go and what they do with their life and whether they can find in themselves and for themselves another way to serve.
What do you want from me?
I want to send you back to school to finish your doctorate. Then you'll join financial intelligence as an analyst. You'll work in a series of private banks on Wall Street, or you'll use your position to uncover funding for terror groups.
Covertly. Yep.
And this story allows us to see how that happens with a Jack who's quite vulnerable and contains those sort of regular guy qualities that make him very empathetic to us, I think.
He's sort of the everyman, isn't he? I mean, I suspect that's, I mean, although you can't really be the everyman looking like Chris Pine, but you know, I mean, I think that's sort of the idea of it.
You know, our idea all along was, what if somebody tapped you on the shoulder, you meaning somebody in the audience, a regular, everyday person who has everyday abilities, and said, we want you to do something for your country. You know, the question is, would you do that? How far would you go? What would you risk?
If you still want to serve your country, there's another way.
We go on the personal journey of Jack, trying to work out what is the right thing to do, what is the right way to serve in 2013. What's the best way, if you're a brilliant man like him, what's the best way to be a patriot?
You know, when you looked around at who could be the next Jack Ryan, that was a very short pool of people. And it was also a short pool because those actors had done such a great job beforehand. And so you can't just, well, let's take a chance on this new guy, because they have to live up to a certain extent to what has been before them, you know?
Chris Pine just brings a modernity in his own way that all those other actors did that makes him particularly appealing. You know, very, very handsome, sexy lad who's a real thinking actor as well. And you do need, if Jack's an analyst, you need to be interested in watching him as he looks at something and analyzes it. And we have that quality with Chris.
He fits the prototype of what we've come to know of a Jack Ryan. You know, he's a smart guy.
Honestly, he was always in our minds the guy to be Jack Ryan.
Now, this is not his first franchise that he's kind of, you know, a part of, you know, with the Star Trek. So he has a little experience with this idea of, you know, seeing something restarted and being kind of the muse that a director will use to go through their movie with.
Tell your guy once he's in there, he needs to enable all encrypted financial sell order packages. I'm the guy, aren't I?
Yeah. I remember watching the films growing up and watching Harrison Ford do it.
Down! Get down!
And there was always a quality to him that even if a superior were to tell him something to do, if he didn't believe it was right in his heart, in his mind, in his bones, if he didn't think it was something that was worth doing, he wouldn't do it and he would fight back.
I will not let you dishonor their memories by pretending you had nothing to do with it. How dare you come in here and lecture me? How dare you, sir? How dare you come into this office and bark at me like some little junkyard dog? I am the President of the United States.
It gives me no pleasure to do it, sir.
And that is, to me, the definition of a good man and a hero. Watching Alec Baldwin do it, I mean, Alec, I always thought, gave him a strong confidence. You never doubted for a second that he was going to get on that submarine.
How do you do, Captain? It's a pleasure to be aboard.
So I kind of always thought about marrying the two, you know, this kind of quiet intelligence that I thought that Harrison brought to it, and this kind of fierce confidence that Alec had, and kind of somewhere in the middle is that relatable guy.
I'm in the CIA.
Thank God.
It's really sad that Tom Clancy has passed away for a lot of reasons, but from a film point of view, I was hoping, you know, when he saw this, he finally saw a Jack Ryan that represented, like, more than it's been before.
You didn't pick this life. I did.
But I picked you.
I'm unafraid of the comparisons game because of, starting as an actor and in the classical theater, and everything's been done by somebody else. And so really it's about the thing itself, and that you have something to bring to it that's different simply by virtue of who you are, you know, and in fact that's the requirement. The requirement is that you bring a lot of yourself to those subjects, those characters, those stories, those films that can take it. It's about just looking at the same thing from a different angle. One man's Hamlet is just to me as fascinating as another man or woman's Hamlet because of who they are and because the thing itself is so rich that their talent and that quality will coincide and produce something unexpected and often very rewarding.